Hello and welcome back to Paranormal BC. The first story I have to tell you today is near Lily Lake in Merritt, BC on June 5th, 1969. David Ludlam, the adult leader of a Merritt Army Cadet group, dropped into the Herald office on Monday afternoon and excitedly related that he and some of his cadets had seen a Sasquatch. The cadet group, consisting of 18 cadets, was camped near Lily Lake in the hills above Merritt over the long weekend. About 6 of the group with Ludlam had sightings of the creature. As it happened, Sunday night, the cadets were having a mock battle in the trees surrounding the camp. One boy, John Zabo, 14, came running back to the camp, obviously very frightened. When joined by the other boys, he told them he heard a noise behind him like someone walking on pine cones. He then heard heavy breathing like somebody was right beside him. He turned around and saw a huge hairy man through the trees. He said it was over 10 feet tall. The creature then ran off through the trees, making a guttural sound while running. Zabo then heard it sloshing around in the creek, below where it was sighted. The boy insisted that it was definitely a hairy man, although it had longer arms and legs than a man. He insisted that it was not a bear. It was now starting to get dark. However, a few of the boys formed a tight little group and went to the location where the creature had last been seen. In a sandy spot, they found a 15 or 16-inch footprint, about 5 inches wide and with a big toe about twice the size of a chicken's egg. There were no claw marks seen in the print either. That night, when the group had gathered close together at their camp, they shone spotlights into the trees. Zabo said that he saw it again. 2 other boys, Jim Ramsey and Robert Huston, also said they saw it. Ramsey looked at it with binoculars, and it was leaning against a tree with one arm watching the camp. He described it as black and hairy with very long arms and small beady eyes. One of the other boys, not named, said that he saw it and that it was carrying a tree branch and seemed to be chewing on it. The creature then ran from the area. David Ludlam, the camp leader, also saw the creature, but did not provide any details. Ludlam believed the creature was a Sasquatch and stated, "We positively saw one running, and it was no bear. A bear doesn't run in an upright position." The group investigated the tree in which the creature was seen leaning against and found a long hair. They then followed the path it had taken back into the woods and found it had run across some rotten logs as they were all chewed up. They said that the logs had been seen previously and were intact. They then found a branch on the ground and it was seen to be covered in slobber where he had been chewing. Monday evening, Ludlam took a party of Herald staff members and family members up to the area and retold the story. What could have been a footprint was observed under the tree mentioned. In the sandy spot where a print had been found by the boys, there was just a bare outline of something. Ludlam said that it looked messed up when the boys were running around looking for more tracks or to again catch sight of the creature. The party was shown the branch the creature had allegedly been chewing on, and which appeared as though it had snapped off, not cut. At this time, Ludlam mentioned that during the campout, the group had discovered that canned food and some bread was missing from their groceries. The Herald reporter stated, "As we walked around through the trees, we did hear strange noises, and sometimes the sound of someone or something walking on pine cones, though it would stop when we would stop to listen. We carefully looked behind every tree as we walked, and we left before dark." This next story comes to you from Trapper Lake or Pasayten River Valley in October of 1996. In mid-October 1996, I made a hunting trip for mule deer bucks into the Pasayten Valley. The Pasayten River Valley is located west of the town of Princeton off of the Hope-Princeton Highway just east of the border of Manning Park, then some 10 to 12 miles in the bush very close to the border of the state of Washington. I towed a 16-foot trailer into the area with my truck and decided to make camp at a favorite spot of mine in a clearing above Peave Creek. Being truly tired from both the 3-hour drive from home and the stress from a week's work, I made a quick dinner, washed it down with some cool mountain water from the creek, and then hit the sack early for some much-needed rest. About midnight I awoke, got out of bed, and quickly stepped outside into the cold to answer the call of nature. Upon opening the trailer door, I was surprised to see snow quietly falling with a light skiff already accumulated on the ground. After attending to the business at hand, I quickly climbed back into my warm bed with high hopes that the snow outside would be around to offer decent tracking conditions come morning. A crisp, clear dawn found me slowly hiking in towards Trapper Lake, high in the hills above and east of Peave Creek. I hadn't gone too far when suddenly I cut across a huge fresh trail of five-toed, barefoot, man-like tracks made in the inch or so of freshly fallen snow. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and upon careful examination, these man-like tracks did not appear to have any type of claw or nail marks ahead of the toes like that of a grizzly or a black bear. These man-like tracks were an estimated 16 to 17 inches long by 7 to 8 inches wide, with a stride of about 4 to 5 feet, much further than I could possibly step, even stretching my legs out. I followed this reasonably straight line of giant man-like tracks for several hundred yards until they entered a thicket of young evergreens and blowdowns. These barefoot tracks seemed strange in that they did not wander about like the tracks of most wild animals would, and showed little or no straddle from an imaginary line through their center. Thinking back, it almost seemed like the maker of those tracks was heading for a place with a purpose in mind. After looking into the thicket and envisioning all sorts of strange scenarios, I decided I didn't want to meet the maker of those tracks and rapidly hightailed it out of that country for the season. I did, however, return to the same area the following September with a friend, and we managed to harvest 2 beautiful mule deer bucks. Although I looked hard, I found no further tracks or possible Sasquatch sign. Over my last 40 or so years of hunting big game in the wilds of BC, I have at times been far too close to big bears. I have smelled, seen, and tracked both grizzly and black bears. The tracks I found in the Pasayten River Valley during October of 1996 were not the tracks of a bear or any other animal that I'm familiar with. This next story takes place around Hope, BC in January of 1969. Hello there. I would like to share with you an experience I once had regarding a creature in whose existence that up to that time I was extremely skeptical of, to say the least. I am no longer a skeptic. In fact, I am now a true believer in the ever-elusive ape-man creature of the Pacific Northwest known as Sasquatch. Picture this. I am driving from Hope to Princeton with my sister and a friend. The year is 1969, and about this time of year, January, there is a wisp of very dry snow blowing across the road in front of us. It is about 3 a.m., not a house or a light or a car around for miles, and one of those nights that is so cold that a person wouldn't even want to stop for a bathroom break for fear of turning into a human ice cube. One thing we knew for sure was that there was not going to be some fool out here at this time of night in this kind of cold and in this isolated location running around in a monkey suit. What happened next is etched into my mind for all time. A creature, definitely not a bear, and even more definitely not a human, walked across the road from left to right. Starting from the time it came into view of my headlights until it went out of my view, my lights was about 6 seconds. I stopped right where I thought the exact spot was that he crossed. We saw no more of him. I, needless to say, did not get out to investigate this creature, as I was riveted with a combination of fear and a strange sense of almost giddy euphoria of a nature that's hard to describe. We sat there for a few minutes asking each other if what we actually saw, what we saw, or were we all crazy. We decided finally to believe what we saw, and what we saw was a creature well over the height of a tall man, say 7 to 8 feet, kind of a grayish in color with very long arms, thick torso, slanted back ape-like forehead, walking with long, deliberate-like strides. At one point he turned in our direction, but not as a person would by merely turning their head, but by turning the upper part of the whole body as well. The only video I have of this is stored in the memory of my mind. I would like to say, only to the few people out there that have had an experience like mine, that my heart goes out to you, knowing that, like me, you can't share it with your friends or family or anyone because you know that even if they tell you they believe you, you know deep inside they don't. Oh well, I don't begrudge these people because I know that being a skeptic myself, and if the tables were turned, I would be and was a non-believer. Now I do believe. The next story we have is from Red Lake in October 1977. We had our boat loaded before first light and made for the marsh. Once there, we set out our decoys and slipped the boat back into the high weeds and grass about 60 feet from open water. Hunting was slow due to the warm weather and little wind. We would blow our mallard calls once in a while, hoping to entice a duck from the far end of the lake, but nothing was moving. A few hours had passed and we had not fired a single shot. Myself and Randy were both bored and staring out over our decoys on Red Lake when something suddenly but quietly surfaced just outside the edge of our flock of decoys. What came up appeared to us to be a human-type head covered in long, wet hair, something what a person with long hair would look like if they surfaced while swimming. The skin under the hair as well as the eyes appeared to be dark brown in color. Our view of this strange head was about even with the shoulders, although they did not break the surface of the water. The eyes, what you could see of them under the hair, looked dark, no white, like an animal's. The face had no expression or movement. It seemed to look at our decoys and us for maybe 10 or 15 seconds and then slip silently under the surface with a large swirl or wake, and it was gone. Nothing else was seen or heard. When we returned to Cliff Tucson's ranch where we were staying, I asked him aside if he had ever seen anything like that, what we witnessed on Red Lake that morning. I'll never forget the look he gave me. I think he figured I was either drunk or on the verge of going crazy. In any case, Old Cliff never saw anything like that, what I described in his 40 years up in that country. I hope you enjoyed those stories. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Paranormal BC.